Jake Morrison wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the rocky terrain of Kepler 442b. The planet's twin suns made everything hot and dry. He had been walking for 3 hours, collecting samples of strange plants and rocks for his research. As a xenobiologist, Jake's job was to study alien life forms on new planets. The mining colony where he lived was small, with only 200 people. Most of them dug for rare metals in the deep caves. Jake preferred being outside, exploring the wild areas where no human had stepped before. Today felt different, though. His scanner was picking up unusual readings from somewhere ahead. Jake climbed over a large boulder and stopped. In front of him was the twisted wreckage of a spacecraft. The metal was dark blue and covered in strange symbols. Jake had never seen a ship like this before. His heart started beating faster. This was definitely not human technology. He pulled out his communicator to call Captain Lisa Park back at the colony, but then he heard something that made him freeze. It was a soft whimpering sound like a hurt animal. Jake followed the sound around the crashed ship. Behind a piece of broken metal, Jake found something that made him gasp. It was a small creature, about the size of a human baby, but it looked nothing like any baby Jake had ever seen. The creature had dark green scales, small claws, and a long tail. Its eyes were large and yellow, filled with pain and fear. Jake recognized what he was looking at immediately. This was a Vorthak cub. The Vorthak were known throughout the galaxy as the most dangerous predators alive. Adult Vorthak stood 8 feet tall and could tear through steel with their claws. The Empire had been fighting them for 20 years. Every human child knew to fear the Vorthak, but this was just a baby and it was dying. The cub was covered in cuts and looked very thin. One of its small arms was bent at a wrong angle. Jake could see dried blood on its scales. It must have been trapped here for days without food or water. Jake knew what he was supposed to do. Imperial law was very clear about this. Any Vorthak found by humans must be killed immediately. They were too dangerous to let live. Even the babies would grow up to be killers. That's what everyone believed. Jake pulled out his plasma pistol and pointed it at the small creature. His finger moved to the trigger. This would be quick and painless. The cub was already dying anyway. But when the yellow eyes looked up at him, Jake saw something he didn't expect. The cub wasn't snarling or trying to attack. It was just scared and hurt like any baby animal would be. Those big eyes seemed to be asking for help. Jake lowered his weapon. He couldn't do it. Instead, he knelt down beside the injured cub. Very slowly, he reached out his hand. The little Vorthak didn't try to bite him. It just watched with those sad yellow eyes. Jake gently touched the cub's head. The scales felt warm and smooth. "Hey there, little guy," Jake whispered. "You're in pretty bad shape, aren't you?" The cub made a small chirping sound. Jake had studied Vorthak language recordings, but this sounded different. Softer, almost like it was trying to talk to him. Jake looked around the crash site. He could see pieces of what looked like baby supplies scattered around. There were small bottles and soft materials that might have been blankets. This ship had been carrying families, not warriors. Making a decision that would change his life forever, Jake carefully picked up the injured cub. It was heavier than it looked, but it didn't struggle. Instead, it seemed to relax in Jake's arms. "I'm going to call you Rex," Jake said quietly, "and I'm going to get you some help." Jake knew he couldn't take Rex back to the colony. Captain Park would have to report it to the Empire immediately. Instead, Jake carried the cub to his small research station 2 miles away. It was a basic shelter where he stored his equipment and sometimes stayed overnight. Inside the station, Jake laid Rex on a soft mat and got to work. He cleaned the cub's wounds with medical supplies and carefully set the broken arm. Rex whimpered during the treatment but didn't try to bite or scratch. Instead, it seemed to understand that Jake was trying to help. Jake mixed some protein powder with water and offered it to Rex in a small bowl. The cub sniffed it carefully, then began to drink. Soon the bowl was empty, and Rex was looking at Jake with what almost seemed like gratitude. For the next 3 days, Jake took care of Rex while pretending to do his normal research work. He told Captain Park that he was studying rock formations in the far valleys. Every morning, Jake brought food and fresh water to Rex. He changed the bandages and checked the healing wounds. Rex grew stronger each day. By the 3rd day, the cub was moving around the shelter, exploring everything with curious yellow eyes. Jake watched in amazement as Rex figured out how to open containers and even learned to use the water dispenser by himself. On the 4th day, Jake's secret was discovered. Captain Lisa Park had grown suspicious when Jake's daily reports became vague and brief. She decided to follow him during his morning trip. When she tracked him to the research station, she heard voices inside. But Jake was supposed to be alone. Lisa pushed open the door and froze. Jake was sitting on the floor, and next to him was a young Vorthak. But this wasn't like any Vorthak she had seen in the Imperial training videos. This one was small and calm. It was actually playing with some of Jake's equipment, making soft chirping sounds. "Jake, what have you done?" Lisa whispered. Jake stood up slowly, putting himself between Lisa and Rex. "I found him dying at a crash site." "I couldn't just let him die, and that's a Vorthak," Lisa said, her hand moving to her weapon. "They're killers, Jake, all of them." Rex looked up at the sound of the angry voice. Instead of snarling or attacking, the young Vorthak moved closer to Jake and made a questioning chirp. It was clearly asking Jake what was wrong. "Look at him, Lisa," Jake said quietly. "Really look. Does he look like a killer to you?" Lisa stared at the small creature. Rex tilted his head to one side, watching her with intelligent eyes. After a moment, Rex made a soft sound and took a small step toward her. He wasn't threatening. He seemed curious about this new human. "This is impossible," Lisa said, but she didn't draw her weapon. "Vorthak don't act like this." "Maybe we've been wrong about them," Jake replied. "Maybe they're not what we think they are." Lisa looked from Jake to Rex and back again. She knew she should report this immediately. But something about the scene in front of her made her hesitate. This wasn't the savage predator from Imperial propaganda films. This was just a baby who had bonded with the human who saved its life. "You know I have to tell Command about this," Lisa said finally. "I know," Jake replied. "But give me some time first. Let me prove that Rex isn't dangerous." Lisa was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "1 week, Jake, that's all I can give you. After that, I have to make my report." Jake smiled and looked down at Rex, who was now sitting quietly beside his leg like a loyal pet. 1 week? Jake agreed. "That's all I need." 6 months had passed since Jake found Rex at the crash site. The small Vorthak cub had grown into a young adolescent, now standing 4 feet tall. His dark green scales had become brighter, and his yellow eyes showed remarkable intelligence. But the most amazing thing was how gentle Rex had become under Jake's care. Every morning, Rex would wake up in his sleeping area next to Jake's bed and help prepare breakfast. He had learned to use simple tools and could even operate the coffee machine. Rex understood basic English and could speak a few words, though his voice was deeper than a human's. Jake had moved Rex to a larger shelter hidden in the canyon walls. Captain Lisa Park had kept her promise and not reported Rex's existence, but she visited often. She was fascinated by how different Rex was from everything they had been taught about Vorthak. "He's learning faster than any child I've ever seen," Lisa told Jake one morning as they watched Rex solve a complex puzzle. "His brain must work differently than ours." Rex looked up at the sound of his name and chirped happily. He had completed the puzzle in half the time it would take most adult humans. Then he carefully put the pieces back in their box, just as Jake had taught him. "Rex good?" the young Vorthak asked, looking for approval. "Very good, buddy," Jake said, patting Rex's scaled head. Rex purred with contentment, a sound that Jake had never heard in any Imperial recordings of adult Vorthak. But keeping Rex hidden was becoming harder. He was growing bigger every week, and his appetite was enormous. Jake had to make secret trips to get enough food. Some of the colony workers were starting to ask questions about Jake's supply orders. The real problem came on a Tuesday afternoon, when Amy Rodriguez's 6-year-old daughter, Carmen, wandered too far from the main settlement. Carmen was exploring the old mining tunnels when part of the ceiling collapsed, trapping her under heavy rocks. Rex heard the child's screams from half a mile away. His enhanced hearing picked up sounds that no human could detect. Before Jake could stop him, Rex was running toward the danger. Jake chased after Rex, but the young Vorthak was much faster. By the time Jake reached the collapsed tunnel, Rex was already moving the heavy stones with his powerful arms. His claws, which could have been deadly weapons, were being used carefully to dig around the trapped girl. "Please don't hurt her," Jake called out, breathing hard from running. Rex looked back at Jake with confusion in his yellow eyes. "Hurt? No hurt. Help small human." Carmen was unconscious but alive when Rex pulled her from the rubble. The young Vorthak held her gently, like she was made of glass. He had been careful not to let his claws touch her skin. "Is small human okay?" Rex asked worriedly. Jake checked Carmen's pulse and breathing. She had some cuts and bruises, but nothing serious. "She's going to be fine, Rex. You saved her life." When Amy Rodriguez arrived with the rescue team 15 minutes later, she found her daughter safe in Jake's arms. But she also saw Rex, who was still helping to clear rocks from the tunnel entrance. Amy screamed when she saw the Vorthak. Several colonists reached for their weapons. Rex immediately backed away, his head down in submission. He had learned that this body language made humans feel less threatened. "Please don't shoot," Jake said quickly, standing in front of Rex. "He saved Carmen." "He's not dangerous. That's a Vorthak," shouted Peter Kane, the colony's security chief. "They kill humans." "This one doesn't," Jake replied firmly. "His name is Rex, and he's been living here peacefully for 6 months. Amy looked at her unconscious daughter, then at Rex. The young Vorthak was making soft, worried sounds as he watched Carmen. There was no anger or violence in his behavior. He seemed genuinely concerned about the child he had rescued. "He really saved her?" Amy asked quietly. "I saw it happen," Jake confirmed. "Rex moved rocks that would have taken our whole team to lift, and he was so careful not to hurt her." Word of Rex's rescue spread quickly through the small colony. Some people were afraid and wanted him sent away immediately, but others were curious. A few of the braver colonists asked to meet Rex. Dr. Helen Brooks, the colony's medical officer, was one of the first to visit. She had studied xenobiology before becoming a doctor and was fascinated by Rex's development. "He's nothing like the Imperial records describe," she told Jake after spending an afternoon with Rex. "His brain scans show activity patterns similar to human children, but more advanced in some areas. He's incredibly empathetic." Rex had sat perfectly still during the brain scan, even though the machine was loud and frightening. When Dr. Brooks explained that the test wouldn't hurt, Rex had nodded and said, "Trust Jake, friend." "Jake, friend, trust Dr. Friend?" The simple logic of Rex's statement surprised everyone. He understood friendship and trust in ways that went beyond mere survival instincts. As weeks passed, more colonists began to accept Rex's presence. Children were especially drawn to him. Rex was always gentle with them, using his strength to lift them high in the air or help them reach things they couldn't touch. He learned their games and even invented new ones, but Jake knew their peaceful time wouldn't last forever. Commander Peter Kane had been sending reports to Imperial Command about the unusual situation on Kepler 442b. He hadn't mentioned Rex directly, but he had asked for guidance about potential Vorthak activity in the system. The answer came 3 months later. An Imperial scout ship appeared in orbit around the planet. Captain Greg Stone contacted the colony immediately. "We've received reports of possible Vorthak presence in your sector," Captain Stone announced over the communication system. "We're sending down a team to investigate. All colonists are to remain in their quarters until the sweep is complete." Jake felt his stomach drop. He looked at Rex, who was playing quietly with a set of building blocks. The young Vorthak had created an elaborate structure that looked like the colony's main building. "Rex," Jake said gently, "we need to talk." Rex looked up with his big yellow eyes. Over the months, he had become very good at reading Jake's emotions. He could tell something was wrong. "Bad humans coming?" Rex asked. He had learned that some humans were good, like Jake and his friends, but others might be dangerous. "Maybe," Jake admitted. "They might want to take you away from me." Rex's scales darkened slightly, a sign that he was upset. "Rex, stay with Jake. Jake, family." The word family hit Jake harder than he expected. Rex was right. Over the past months, they had become family. Jake couldn't imagine his life without the curious, gentle creature who had brought so much joy to the colony. "We'll figure something out," Jake promised. "I won't let them hurt you." That night, Jake couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed listening to Rex's quiet breathing from the next room. Tomorrow, Imperial soldiers would land on their planet. They would be looking for evidence of Vorthak activity, and they would find Rex. Jake knew what Imperial protocol demanded. Any Vorthak, even children, were to be terminated immediately or taken to research facilities for study. Neither option was acceptable to Jake. He had saved Rex once before. Now he would have to find a way to save him again. Outside their shelter, the first Imperial shuttle was already preparing to land. Captain Stone and his team had no idea what they were about to discover. They expected to find evidence of typical Vorthak aggression and violence. Instead, They would find something that challenged everything the Empire believed about their greatest enemy. They would find a young Vorthak who called a human family and who had never hurt anyone in his life. Jake closed his eyes and tried to think of a plan. He had less than 12 hours before the Imperial team reached their section of the colony. 12 hours to find a way to protect the most important thing in his life. Rex's soft snoring from the next room reminded Jake of what was at stake. This wasn't just about one young Vorthak anymore. Rex represented something bigger. He was proof that everything humans believed about the Vorthak might be wrong, and Jake was the only one who could protect that truth. The Imperial research team landed at dawn. Dr. Helen Brooks watched from her clinic window as 6 soldiers in full combat armor stepped out of their shuttle. Behind them came a woman in a white lab coat, carrying several cases of scientific equipment. Jake had hidden Rex in the deepest part of the canyon, but he knew it was only a temporary solution. The Imperial scanners would eventually detect Rex's life signs. Jake needed a different plan. Captain Lisa Park met the Imperial team at the landing pad. The woman in the lab coat introduced herself as Dr. Margaret Walsh, a specialist in Vorthak behavior and biology. We've received reports of unusual energy signatures in this sector, Dr. Walsh explained to Lisa. Our long-range sensors detected what might be Vorthak technology. We need to investigate immediately. Of course, Lisa replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We'll provide any assistance you need. Dr. Walsh began setting up her equipment while the soldiers spread out to search the colony. Jake watched from a distance, his heart pounding. He had to find a way to protect Rex without putting the other colonists in danger. That afternoon, Jake made a decision that would change everything. He approached Dr. Walsh while she was calibrating her scanners near the canyon entrance. Dr. Walsh, Jake called out. I'm Jake Morrison, the colony's xenobiologist. I have something important to show you. Dr. Walsh looked up from her equipment. She had read Jake's research reports and knew he was a respected scientist. What is it, Mr. Morrison? I found something 6 months ago, Jake said carefully. Something that might change how we understand the Vorthak. Dr. Walsh's eyes narrowed with interest. Show me. Jake led her to the hidden shelter where Rex was waiting. The young Vorthak had grown nervous about all the new humans on the planet, but he trusted Jake completely. When Dr. Walsh saw Rex, she stumbled backward and reached for her communicator. But then something unexpected happened. Rex didn't snarl or attack. Instead, he stood up politely and spoke in clear English. Hello, new human, Rex said in his deep but gentle voice. Jake says you are scientists like Jake. Rex likes scientists. Dr. Walsh's hand froze on her communicator. In 20 years of studying Vorthak, she had never heard one speak so calmly to a stranger. Every recorded encounter showed Vorthak as aggressive and hostile from the moment they saw humans. This is impossible, Dr. Walsh whispered. Vorthak don't behave like this. Rex good Vorthak, Rex said proudly. Jake teach Rex many things. Rex help humans. Rex save small human from rocks. Dr. Walsh looked at Jake with amazement. How long have you been hiding him? 6 months, Jake admitted. I found him as a baby at a crash site. He was dying, so I helped him. And he's never shown any aggression? Any violent behavior? Never, Jake confirmed. He's the gentlest creature I've ever known. He plays with the colony children. He helps with daily tasks. He's saved human lives. Dr. Walsh slowly approached Rex, who remained perfectly calm. She pulled out a small scanner and began taking readings. Rex watched with curious yellow eyes but didn't move away. His brain patterns are completely different from adult Vorthak we've studied, Dr. Walsh said in amazement. The areas associated with aggression and territorial behavior are almost inactive. But the sections linked to empathy and social bonding are highly developed. Different how? Jake asked. Every adult Vorthak we've captured has shown extreme hostility and rage. Their brain scans reveal constant stress hormones and hyperactive fear responses. But Rex's readings are more like a human child. Calm, curious, emotionally stable. Rex tilted his head as he listened to them talk about him. Dr. Walsh study Rex's brain? Not hurt Rex? No, young one, Dr. Walsh said softly. I won't hurt you. I'm just trying to understand how you're so different from other Vorthak. Over the next 3 days, Dr. Walsh conducted extensive tests with Rex's cooperation. She discovered that Rex's intelligence was far beyond what anyone had expected. He could solve complex problems, understand abstract concepts, and even create simple art. But the most shocking discovery came when Dr. Walsh showed Rex recordings of adult Vorthak behavior from Imperial encounters. Rex watched the violent footage with visible distress. Vorthak in pictures very angry. Rex observed sadly. Why Vorthak hurt humans? Rex not understand. Your people and humans have been fighting for many years, Dr. Walsh explained. Rex people not fight. Rex said firmly. Rex people family. Family not hurt other family. Dr. Walsh began reviewing Imperial records of Vorthak encounters with new eyes. She noticed patterns that had been overlooked before. Every recorded Vorthak attack had happened after Imperial ships had entered Vorthak territory without permission. The Vorthak had always been responding to what they saw as invasions. Jake, Dr. Walsh said quietly on the fourth day, I think we've been wrong about the Vorthak. Very wrong. What do you mean? Look at these attack patterns, she said, showing him a holographic display. Every single encounter happened in or near Vorthak space. We've been treating them as aggressive invaders, but they might have been defending their territory all along. Jake studied the data. You're saying we started the war? I'm saying Rex might represent what Vorthak are actually like when they're not being threatened. Peaceful, intelligent, family-oriented. The adults we've encountered were probably fighting to protect their young. The revelation hit Jake like a physical blow. Rex's gentle nature wasn't an exception. It might be normal for his species. We need to tell Imperial Command, Dr. Walsh said. This changes everything. But their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Admiral George Stone's battlecruiser in orbit. The Admiral had received Dr. Walsh's preliminary reports and decided to investigate personally. Admiral Stone was a veteran of the Vorthak Wars. He had lost friends and family members in Vorthak attacks. When he learned that a live Vorthak was being kept on the planet, his response was immediate and harsh. Dr. Walsh, you will terminate the specimen immediately. Admiral Stone ordered over the communication system. Allowing a Vorthak to live violates every Imperial protocol. Admiral, you don't understand, Dr. Walsh replied. This individual is different. He's peaceful. He's been living with humans for months without any incidents. Impossible. Vorthak are killers by nature. You've been deceived by its cunning. Terminate it now, or I'll send down a team to do it for you. Jake felt his world crashing down around him. He looked at Rex, who was quietly building a puzzle nearby. The young Vorthak didn't understand the conversation, but he could sense Jake's distress. Jake sad? Rex asked, approaching his human friend. Rex helped Jake feel better? The simple offer of comfort from the creature Admiral Stone wanted dead made Jake's decision easy. No, Jake said into the communicator. I won't let you kill him. Excuse me, Mr. Morrison. You heard me, Admiral. Rex hasn't hurt anyone. He's saved human lives. If you want to kill him, you'll have to go through me first. Dr. Walsh looked at Jake with surprise and growing respect. She had spent her career following Imperial orders without question. But after spending time with Rex, she was beginning to understand Jake's position. Admiral, Dr. Walsh said carefully, I request permission to continue my studies. This specimen provides valuable intelligence about Vorthak psychology and behavior. Denied. The creature will be terminated within the hour. Admiral Stone cut the communication, and Jake knew their time was up. But as he looked around the room, he realized he wasn't alone in his determination to protect Rex. Captain Lisa Park stepped forward. Count me in, Jake, Dr. Walsh nodded as well. The scientific value of Rex's existence is too important to lose. Even some of the Imperial soldiers who had been guarding the compound looked uncertain. Over the past few days, they had watched Rex interact peacefully with colonists. It was hard to see him as the monster they had been told to fear. Rex looked around at all the humans in the room. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew his family was in trouble. Rex fight bad humans? He asked Jake. Rex protect family? Nobody, Jake said, pulling Rex into a gentle hug. You don't fight anyone. That's not who you are. Rex's purr rumbled through his chest as he returned the embrace. Jake always protect Rex, now Rex protect Jake. Outside, Admiral Stone's shuttles were preparing to land. But Jake was no longer afraid. Rex had shown him something important over the past months. Sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do, and sometimes one person's refusal to follow unjust orders could change the course of history. Admiral George Stone's assault shuttles descended through the morning sky like metal predators. Jake watched from the colony's main building as 20 Imperial Marines in full combat armor took positions around the settlement. Their plasma rifles gleamed in the twin sun's light. Rex stood beside Jake, his yellow eyes wide with confusion. The young Vorthak had never seen so many armed humans before. His scales had darkened to deep green, a sign of stress. Why so many soldier humans come? Rex asked quietly. Rex do something bad? No, buddy, Jake said, placing a protective hand on Rex's shoulder. You didn't do anything wrong. Some humans are just afraid of things they don't understand. Admiral Stone himself led the final shuttle to the landing pad. He was a tall, gray-haired man with cold blue eyes and scars on his face from old battles. Behind him walked Commander Davis Blake and a team of Imperial executioners, specially trained to handle dangerous alien creatures. Captain Lisa Park met them at the colony entrance. She stood as straight as she could, but Jake could see her hands shaking slightly. Admiral Stone, Lisa said formally. Welcome to Kepler 442b. Captain Park, the Admiral replied without warmth. Where is the Vorthak specimen? Sir, I request that you meet with our xenobiologist first. Jake Morrison has important information about the creature's behavior. The creature's behavior is irrelevant, Admiral Stone said sharply. All Vorthak are dangerous. I've seen what they can do to human colonies. Entire families torn apart by their claws. This one will be no different. But sir, this one has been living peacefully with humans for months. He's never hurt anyone. Admiral Stone's face hardened. Impossible. You've been fooled by its deception. Vorthak are cunning predators. It's probably been planning an attack this whole time. Jake emerged from the main building with Rex walking calmly beside him. Several Marines immediately raised their weapons, but Rex showed no signs of aggression. He simply stood next to Jake and watched the new humans with curious eyes. Admiral Stone's hand moved to his sidearm when he saw Rex. That's the creature? This is Rex, Jake said firmly. And he's under my protection. Mr. Morrison, you're in violation of Imperial Law Section 847. Harboring a hostile alien species is punishable by death. Step away from the creature immediately. No, Jake replied. Rex isn't hostile. He's never been hostile. He's saved human lives. Admiral Stone studied Rex with the eyes of a veteran warrior. He had fought Vorthak before and knew how dangerous they could be. But this young creature seemed different. There was no rage in its posture, no predatory tension. It almost looked innocent. Impossible, the Admiral muttered. They're born killers. Dr. Walsh stepped forward with her research data. Admiral, my studies show that this individual has completely different brain patterns from adult Vorthak. His psychological profile is peaceful and cooperative. Hello, Admiral Human, Rex said politely, his deep voice carrying no threat. Jake says you important leader. Rex happy to meet important human. Admiral Stone stepped back in shock. In all his years fighting Vorthak, he had never heard one speak so calmly to humans. Every encounter had been filled with roars, snarls, and violence. It speaks English? The Admiral asked. Rex learns many human words, Rex said proudly. Jake teach Rex. Rex like learning. Learning fun. Commander Blake, who had been quiet until now, moved closer to Rex. What are your intentions toward humans? He demanded. Rex tilted his head thoughtfully. Rex want to help humans. Humans are Rex family. Family help family. Family? Admiral Stone repeated. Vorthak don't have families with humans. Rex have Jake family. Have Lisa family. Have Doctor family. Have colony families, Rex explained patiently. All humans in colony are Rex family now. Jake watched as confusion spread across the Imperial officers' faces. Rex's simple honesty was challenging everything they believed about his species. But the peaceful moment was shattered by the arrival of 3 more ships in the sky. These weren't Imperial vessels. The ships were sleek and dark blue with the same symbols Jake had seen on Rex's crashed vessel. Vorthak ships, Commander Blake shouted. It's an attack! The Imperial Marines took defensive positions, their weapons trained on the approaching vessels. But Jake noticed something strange. The ships weren't moving aggressively. They were broadcasting communication signals and flying in a peaceful formation. Rex suddenly became very excited. His scales brightened and he made chirping sounds Jake had never heard before. Family ships, Rex called out joyfully. Rex, real family come. Your family? Jake asked. Yes. Rex smell family scents. Rex mother and father and sisters come for Rex. Admiral Stone's face went pale. They're here for a rescue mission. The creature has been sending them signals somehow. No signals, Rex said, shaking his head. Family just looked for Rex very long time. Family never stopped looking. The lead Vorthak ship landed 200 yards from the colony. Jake watched as the airlock opened and 3 adult Vorthak emerged. They were massive, standing 8 feet tall with powerful builds and sharp claws, but they moved carefully, their hands visible and empty of weapons. The largest Vorthak, a female with darker scales than Rex, called out in their native language. Rex responded with excited chirps and clicks. "What are they saying?" Admiral Stone demanded. Dr. Walsh had been studying Vorthak language recordings for years. The female is asking if Rex is safe. Rex is telling her that the humans have been good to him. He's telling her that humans are his friends. The female Vorthak approached slowly, her eyes fixed on Rex. When she was 50 feet away, Rex broke free from Jake's side and ran to her. The reunion was gentle and emotional. The adult Vorthak wrapped her massive arms around Rex, purring loudly. "Rex, mother." Rex called back to Jake. "Mother, this Jake. Jake save Rex life. Jake best human." The female Vorthak looked at Jake with intelligent eyes. She spoke slowly in broken English, clearly struggling with the unfamiliar language. "Human, Jake, save my child?" "Yes," Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Rex was hurt. I helped him." The female Vorthak approached Jake carefully. Admiral Stone tensed, ready to order his men to fire. But instead of attacking, the massive creature knelt down in front of Jake and bowed her head. "Thank you," she said simply. The other 2 Vorthak, whom Rex identified as his father and older sister, also approached peacefully. They spoke with Rex in their own language, and Dr. Walsh translated what she could understand. They're asking Rex about his time with humans. Rex is telling them about the colony, about the children he plays with, about how Jake taught him to read and solve puzzles. He's telling them that humans aren't enemies. Admiral Stone watched this impossible scene with growing confusion. This doesn't make sense. Vorthak attack human ships on sight. They've killed thousands of our people. Rex's father, a massive male with battle scars on his arms, spoke to Dr. Walsh in careful English. "Humans come to our worlds," he said slowly. "Humans shoot first. We defend children. You're saying we started the fighting?" Dr. Walsh asked. "Humans take our planets. We only want protect families." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Rex's family weren't the monsters he had been taught to fear. They were parents looking for their lost child. Parents who had been defending their homes from what they saw as human invaders. "Admiral," Jake said urgently, "we need to reconsider everything. If the Vorthak have been defending themselves, then we've been the aggressors." "Impossible," Admiral Stone said, but his voice lacked conviction. "They're predators, killers." Rex's mother spoke again, this time directly to Admiral Stone. "Rex, tell us humans good." Rex, say, "Humans have families too. We understand now." She gestured to her family, then to the human colonists. "All want protect children, all same." For a moment, the 2 groups faced each other in tense silence. Imperial Marines with weapons drawn, Vorthak parents wanting their child back, and in the middle, Rex and Jake, representing a bridge between 2 species that had been at war for 20 years. Then Rex did something that surprised everyone. He walked back to Jake and took his human friend's hand. Then he reached out to his Vorthak mother with his other hand. "Rex have 2 families now," he announced. "Human family and Vorthak family. All family together." Admiral Stone looked around at his Marines, then at the peaceful Vorthak family, then at the colonists who had been living safely with Rex for months. Everything he believed about the enemy was crumbling before his eyes. "Stand down," he ordered quietly. "Sir?" Commander Blake asked. "I said stand down. Lower your weapons." The Marines reluctantly obeyed. The Vorthak family relaxed slightly, though they remained alert. "Mr. Morrison," Admiral Stone said slowly, "it appears we need to have a very long conversation about what's really been happening in this war." 5 years had passed since the day Admiral Stone lowered his weapons on Kepler 442b. The galaxy was a very different place now, and Jake Morrison found himself at the center of changes he never could have imagined. The small mining colony had become the most famous settlement in human space. Reporters, diplomats, and scientists came from across the galaxy to visit the place where the first peaceful contact between humans and Vorthak had occurred. They called it the Morrison Incident, though Jake always felt uncomfortable with the attention. Rex had grown into a magnificent adult Vorthak, standing 7 feet tall with bright green scales and intelligent yellow eyes. But unlike the aggressive warriors described in old Imperial propaganda, Rex remained gentle and thoughtful. He had become the galaxy's first Vorthak ambassador to human space. Jake sat on the porch of his expanded home, watching Rex play with a group of children in the yard. 3 of them were human colonist kids, 2 were young Vorthak who had come with the latest diplomatic mission, and 1 was a small, blue-skinned creature from the Centauri system. The interspecies adoption program that Jake had helped create was bringing together young beings from dozens of different worlds. "Papa Jake," called out Carmen Rodriguez, now 11 years old. "Rex is teaching us how to build a shelter like his people use." Jake smiled. Carmen still called him Papa Jake, even though she lived with her mother, Amy. The girl had become fascinated by xenobiology after her rescue years ago and spent most of her free time learning about different alien species. Rex looked up from the construction project and waved at Jake. "Jake, small humans very smart. Learn Vorthak building ways very fast. Just be careful with those claws around the little ones," Jake called back. "Always careful, Jake." Rex never hurt family. The word family had taken on new meaning in Jake's life. His household now included not just Rex, but several other adopted youngsters from various species. There was Zira, a young reptilian creature whose parents had died in a space accident. Kevin, a human orphan from the outer colonies. And Sarah, a small bird-like being from a recently contacted world. Dr. Helen Brooks approached the porch, carrying her daily medical reports. She had become the galaxy's leading expert on interspecies psychology and health. Her research had proven that young beings from different worlds could be raised together successfully, forming bonds that crossed species lines. "How are our newest arrivals adjusting?" Jake asked. "Remarkably well," Helen replied. "The Altarian twins are already learning to communicate with the others, and little Tony from Earth seems completely comfortable with his Vorthak foster family." The interspecies adoption program had grown far beyond what Jake had ever expected. When news of Rex's peaceful upbringing spread throughout the galaxy, other species had begun to reconsider their relationships with former enemies. Worlds that had been at war for generations were finding common ground through shared care of orphaned children. Captain Lisa Park, now promoted to Admiral, visited whenever her duties allowed. She commanded the new Galactic Cooperation Fleet, a joint force with ships and crews from dozens of different worlds. The old Imperial Navy had been dissolved after the truth about the Vorthak War became public. "Jake," Lisa said, joining them on the porch, "I have news from the council meeting on Earth." "Good news, I hope?" "The best. The Rigelian Empire has agreed to join the Cooperation Pact. They're sending their first group of orphaned youngsters next month." Jake shook his head in amazement. The Rigelians had been considered one of the most hostile species in known space. Their insect-like appearance and hive-mind culture had made them seem completely alien to most humans. But when their representative saw videos of Rex playing peacefully with human children, they had requested to join the adoption program. Rex bounded up to the porch, his heavy footsteps making the wooden boards creak. "Jake, small humans ask Rex to tell story about old days." "Rex tell about first meeting Jake?" "Of course, buddy. They love your stories." Rex had become an incredible storyteller, weaving tales that helped children understand how different species could overcome fear and prejudice. His favorite story was always about the day Jake chose to save a dying alien cub instead of following Imperial orders. Rex tell about how Jake very brave. Jake see hurt baby and not listen to bad rules. Jake choose kindness. As Rex headed back to the children, Dr. Margaret Walsh arrived with her monthly research update. She had left Imperial service after the Morrison incident and now directed the Interspecies Understanding Institute. Her work documenting the success of mixed species families had convinced hundreds of worlds to reconsider their isolationist policies. "Jake, you need to see these latest statistics," Margaret said excitedly. "We now have active adoption programs on over 300 worlds. The psychological development scores for cross-species adoptees are consistently higher than single-species control groups." "Higher how?" "Empathy, problem-solving ability, communication skills, adaptability. Children raised in mixed-species families score better in almost every category we measure." Jake watched Rex demonstrate Vorthak building techniques to his attentive audience. The sight still amazed him sometimes. 5 years ago, if someone had told him that human children would be learning construction methods from a Vorthak, he would have thought they were insane. A communication chime from inside the house interrupted his thoughts. Jake went inside to answer the call and found Admiral George Stone's weathered face on the screen. Stone had undergone his own transformation over the past 5 years. The discovery that the Empire had been the aggressor in the HFY War had shattered his worldview. He now worked as a military advisor for the Galactic Cooperation Council, helping to prevent the kind of misunderstandings that had led to decades of unnecessary conflict. "Jake," Stone said without preamble, "I wanted to give you a personal update. The War Crimes Tribunal has reached its verdict on the Imperial leadership, and Emperor Harrison and his council have been found guilty of genocide, falsifying intelligence, and crimes against sapient beings. They'll spend the rest of their lives in rehabilitation centers, working to understand the damage they caused." Jake felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. Justice had been served, but it couldn't bring back the thousands who had died in the unnecessary war. "There's something else," Stone continued. "The Council wants to offer you the position of Director of Interspecies Relations. It would mean moving to the capital and overseeing adoption programs across the entire galaxy." Jake looked out the window at Rex and the children. The young Vorthak was now showing them how to weave grass into rope, his massive claws working with delicate precision. "Thank you, Admiral, but I'll have to decline. My work is here." Stone smiled. "I thought you might say that. The Council expected as much, but they want you to know that your little colony has become the most important diplomatic site in the galaxy. What you started here has prevented more wars than any peace treaty ever could." After ending the call, Jake returned to the porch. The afternoon was growing late, and some of the children were being called home for dinner. Rex was helping the youngest ones gather their toys. Carmen approached Jake with a serious expression on her young face. "Papa Jake, I've been thinking about something." "What's that, sweetheart?" "When I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to help alien kids who don't have families." Jake knelt down to Carmen's level. "That's a wonderful goal. But you know what? You're already helping. Every day you play with Zira and Kevin and the others, you're showing them that different species can be friends." "Really? Really? You don't have to wait until you're grown up to make a difference." As the sun set over Kepler 442b, Jake gathered his unusual family for dinner. The dining room was a chaos of different languages, eating habits, and cultural preferences. Zira preferred her meat nearly raw, while Sarah ate only fruits and seeds. Kevin insisted on using proper utensils, while Rex ate with his claws in the traditional Vorthak manner. But somehow it all worked. Love, Jake had learned, was the universal language that all species could understand. After dinner, as the younger children settled down for bedtime stories, Rex approached Jake with something he had been working on in his spare time. It was a wooden carving of Jake holding a small Vorthak cub. "Rex, make this for Jake," he said shyly. "To remember first day we become family." Jake accepted the gift with tears in his eyes. The carving was beautiful, showing incredible artistic skill, but more than that, it represented the bond between them that had changed the galaxy. "Thank you, Rex. I'll treasure this always." "Jake," Rex said quietly. "Rex want to ask something important." "Anything, buddy." "Rex want to adopt human cub. Rex want to be parent like Jake is parent." Jake stared at his oldest friend in amazement. "You want to adopt a human child?" "Yes, Rex learned from Jake how to be good parent. Rex want to give love to small human who needs family, just like Jake give love to Rex." The request was unprecedented. No Vorthak had ever formally adopted a human child. But looking at Rex's hopeful yellow eyes, Jake knew there was only one answer. "I think that would be wonderful. Rex, I'll help you with the paperwork." Rex's purr of happiness rumbled through the house, causing some of the other children to giggle from their bedrooms. Later that night, after all the children were asleep, Jake sat alone on his